currency. Now, this is a private bank because they have a board, a private board of stockholders that reap the profits. But on a free market without government's guns giving them that legal authority to counterfeit, of course, they couldn't do what they're doing. In a free market, of course, you're a bank. You are responsible for holding 100% of anything that anyone deposits with you, okay? So people, basically the banks evolved, people used to trade silver and gold coins for things. That was heavy. They realized they could use paper receipts for gold and silver that was held in a warehouse, okay? And then people would accept that as money because they knew they could take that paper to the bank and they could get the money. Okay, it wasn't money, but it was a receipt for their money that they could go get. What happened inevitably once we got this going is banks realized that not everybody came and got their gold and their silver at the same time. And a few criminals started printing more paper than they had gold and silver. Okay, so they got to make money for themselves. And then they loaned it to people, of course, at interest. So now they're getting to charge interest for money that doesn't exist, that they printed for nearly free. The cost of the printing press, ink, paper. So in 1913, the bankers were already long familiar with the scheme. It had been pulled off many times, China, a couple other places. It always failed, always collapsed. They legalized it. They said the bank can do this legally, we'll call it fractional reserve. So you only need to keep a percentage of your customer's property. And the rest you're allowed to embezzle and do what you want with it. So you can loan it to other people. So think about it, and this is important, even with gold, okay, theoretically they might have enough gold to give you the same weight of gold when you come to the bank, okay, a fractional reserve bank, an insolvent bank, okay. But do they have your gold? Or is it someone else's gold? Is it possible that your gold might mean something different to you than someone else's? Well, it might not matter to you, but the principle is clear. It's embezzling when you use someone else's property and loan it to another person as if it's your own. Okay, so what we did was legalize that. Now, this was also tried, this is important, I'm going to try and be quick. This was tried in the grain storage industry at one time. They actually, during the Great Depression, tried to implement a fractional reserve grain warehouse where people would store their grain and they would trade their grain on a stock market for grain with the paper tickets. And they started having inflation. The people who were printing these tickets started printing false tickets, and it created what's called a boom-bust cycle. I'm not going to talk about that yet, because we're going to come to it later, but remember it. Okay, so fractional reserve banking is the principle that they don't have to keep, they're contracted to hold your property, but they don't really have to hold it all, and they can create money they can counterfeit out of thin air. All right, at the same time, they passed the income tax, and the two go hand in hand, okay, because basically, the idea was they were going to increase the spending capacity of the central government to try and solve all of society's ills. All right? So the income tax is just the same type of thing where basically you're going to take from some to try and help from others. Now, in theory, both the fractional reserve and the income tax were sold as if it would help the poor. Okay, the fractional reserve was promoted to the people as something the bankers were against, when in fact the bankers had written it. And this was going to be a way to make credit easily available to the people. See, we're just going to print more money. That way there's more money for all the people, and the people have more money, and everything's just going to be wonderful. If we just print more money out of thin air, everything's going to be wealthy. All right, and so the income tax is the same thing. If we just take enough money from those evil rich people, and we give it to the poor people, we're going to eliminate poverty. That's how they sold these things. But of course, the reality is the people who run this system are the ones who are profiting from it. Now, so we've gone over the nature of banking. I got to talk a little bit about money and why gold and silver is real money and paper is not. Silver, originally in a barter society, okay, you trade you had, say, rice, and you had more rice than you wanted, and you wanted something else. Well, you'd go around and you'd say, well, listen, does anyone want my rice? I'm looking for wheat, okay? And so the problem was is that you had to find someone who not only had wheat in the amount you wanted and would sell it at the same conversion price that you wanted, but they also had to want what you have. So here's where money enters the scene. Silver and gold. Everybody values silver and gold. Not everyone, but generally society as a whole has valued it over the course of time. And therefore, so even if you don't particularly care to have silver and gold at a given moment, you can use it as a medium to facilitate an exchange that barter otherwise couldn't achieve. So basically, it increases the number of transactions that can be made. It increases the division of labor in society so that more and more people can specialize, do what they're best at, and then trade with other people who are better at the things that they're not good at, which increases overall production in the society and generates more wealth. All right. So the problem is when you enter paper money, this paper currency, this paper has no intrinsic value. The only reason it has any value is because the government said you have to accept it, and if you don't accept it, we're going to come with our guns and we're going to put you in jail. All right, and that occurred not long after 1913 with the fractional reserve and the income tax by design, because that reckless extension of credit and reckless creation of counterfeit money created a boom-bust cycle and a bankruptcy. In 1933, they had printed way too much paper for the amount of silver and gold in society, and so the people realized it. They realized if they wanted their silver and gold, which was very smart, they needed to go to the bank and get it now, because the bank didn't have everybody's. And so this is what created what's called a run on the bank. This is when the government interceded and closed the banks and gave the banks legal protection from fulfilling their own contracts. So the banks have agreed and contracted and have been paid to hold your money and give it to you when you want it. And now the banks come in and say, well, you know what? You don't have to give the gold and silver to your customers. Instead, all the people in the United States are going to hand over their silver and gold to us, and we're going to give you this worthless paper in exchange. So basically that was the bankruptcy. And then in addition to that, of course, at that time they put in what's called the FDIC insurance, which people tend to think is good, right? You can't lose your money in the bank now. If the bank does get a run on it and runs out of money, the government's insured it. You're safe. Eventually, and it does take some time, the government will send you your money. That's true. But the reason they did this, of course, wasn't to help you. The reason they did it is to keep the scam going. See, because when banks collapse because they've been defrauding their clients, that's a good thing. You don't want banks that are successfully defrauding and embezzling from their clients to stay in business so that they can keep stealing and embezzling from your clients. You actually want those banks to get caught, and then you arrest them. And according to the 1792 Coinage Act, they were supposed to get the death penalty. Right? Any politician involved in our government whatsoever that is involved in passing paper money is supposed to be executed for treason in violation of the Coinage Act. That's how serious the good founders of this country were about protecting us from the government arbitrarily taking anything they want from us at any time. So that is so the boom-bust cycle I mentioned before. This is what we're dealing with, guys. This is the financial crisis that we just had. Before that, the housing subprime when we had the .com. Before that, we had the savings and loan. Too long before that, we had housing in the Great Depression. All caused by the same thing, inflationary credit expansion. When the government counterfeits currency and puts it out there, what they do is they devalue the currency. It's the law of supply and demand. The air we breathe above ground is free. Why is it free? The air has incredible value to us. We would die without it. That's an extremely valuable thing. Why don't we have to pay for it? Well, because it's not scarce, okay? Now, the moment you have to, say, go diving underwater, and you're going to pay someone to create a tank to hold that air, to pressurize that tank, to supervise that